Make a slight adjustment here. All right. So, folks, if you're just now logging in, I'm so excited about our guest today. Go ahead and let us know where you are signing in from, what city, what state, what country. We are glad you made it here with us. Just double checking my sound here. Let us know, too, if you can hear us okay, that you can see us and hear us. We'd love to know that as well. I think I've got all my stuff set just right. Madeline, I've been working on this whole delay thing because there's a little bit of a delay I noticed in some of my last, as far as my speaking in my mouth, the voice matching. So we're working on that. Guys, if you're just not signing in, let us know where you're signing in from, what city, what state, what country. If you're looking for ways to reinvigorate where you're going to go next in your career, if you're really focusing on your career search, if you want to hear from someone who has walked in the shoes of an HR person to kind of give you some advice, she's got a master class, and she's doing a lot of great things on the career coaching side. So I want to welcome you to the show, Madeline Mann.
Thank you so much for having me here. Happy to be here.
And we actually met on Clubhouse, which was cool.
Yes. Yeah. Clubhouse has been a blast. I've just made such deeper relationships on there.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And the past couple of weeks, I haven't been on as much as I had been before. So I need to get back on it. Any late breaking stuff you want to share about Clubhouse or your experiences on there?
I don't know. I spend a lot of my time helping others, giving my expertise to others. But on Clubhouse, I have taken the complete learner stance. Like, I remember joining your room and you gave me some amazing advice, and we talked until like 1 a.m. or something wacky like that. And you're giving me advice on like the ways to hire for like a remote team and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that it really is great. I think a lot of people are promoting it in a way where they're like, oh, this is a way to get your thought leadership out there. And I think it is, but I've just found I've gotten so much great advice, even from my nutrition and, the different ways that I can, like build teams and all those things. There's just so many amazing people on there, just happy to have conversations about their favorite topics.
Awesome. I think I took the same stance as you, that I was there originally more for the learning aspect, more so than, hey, I'm awesome, come work with me kind of thing. And I've learned a lot on there. I think that this is actually might be a good cue for those who are looking for that next step in their career. They may learn some great stuff on there, maybe within their industry. Would you say?
Yes, I have. I've job search programs, and in the coaching program, we started getting. I had some invites to hand out, and we started getting people into Clubhouse. And it's not about necessarily only going into those rooms that are like, get your resume reviewed, get your LinkedIn profile reviewed, which is good, but also get into those rooms where you're just simply having conversations about your industry, right? That healthcare industry and these different dynamics and this and that. And I think that is an amazing way to just authentically build these relationships.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that point. And I would, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot too, where we think that things are going, is it's more about the human connection more than ever when it comes to looking for that next position. So being able to network, like you said, having those deep, meaningful conversations, whether it's Clubhouse or any other platform, being able to network that way. How important do you think that is in a job search?
It is. At this point, so job searching and applying to jobs has such a low barrier to entry. Before it was you'd have to mail something in, or you'd hand in a piece of paper and you might have to drive there or mail it, whatnot. And now there's such a low barrier of entry that there's so much noise. And so how do you get above the noise? People, you build relationships. They're not going to build relationships with, the 500 applicants. They'll probably build relationships with 5 of the applicants who actually make that effort. So I think with job seeking becoming, quote, easier, it's actually making it a lot harder because there's just so much more noise and people are blasting out their resume in every direction.
Oh, I love this. That's a good tip right there. Thank you very much. That's awesome. So Madeline, I want to kind of break down a couple of things that maybe you, by the way, I want you to say your first name for me.
Madeline.
Okay, I want to make sure I was saying it right. Okay, Madeline. So Madeline, whenever we are starting to kind of rethink, pivot in our career, what's one of the things that you normally talk to a person about when they say, you know what, I kind of want to make a shift. I don't think I'm going down the right path. I want to go into an area maybe I don't have that experience specifically for that job. I want to make that pivot. How do I get there? What advice would you give in that instance?
The best thing you can do is the first step is knowing exactly what that pivot is. And if you know what you want to pivot into, half the work is already done. Amazing. So you're focused. But a lot of people don't know what they want. So the first thing I would tell them is to get really clear about your next move. Because what so many people will do is they do what I call hitchhiking through your career, where they'll apply to a bunch of roles that seemingly could be a good fit. You know, they read the job descriptions. They think I could do that. I could be good at that. And I call it hitchhiking because they send out all these applications. They stick out their thumb, and whichever companies and whichever roles it choose them, that's their next step. Whoever gives them the offer, that's where they go, which is a lot less intentional. So really zoning in on that. And you know this very well as well, that companies are actually looking for people who are extremely intentional about their career changes. They don't want someone who is, you're going to be my career experiment. I'm going to join your company. Maybe I'll leave in a few months after I realize this isn't the right move for me because I didn't do the pre-work on my own to understand if this is the right move. So it comes from both sides, right? It comes from helping you to not make too many career changes in your life because you're more intentional. And also the companies, they can smell it from a mile away. They say, we don't want a career experimenter. We want someone who, even if they're changing careers, they're sure-footed about it. So then the second step would be to start building relevant skills and experience, which people think is impossible. Right. It's impossible to build experience without having someone hand me an offer letter, I sign it, and then them pay me money. But there's so many other ways to do that. It can be a matter of, if you have a current job, start doing special projects at that current job, and don't undervalue, even if it's a special project that you work on for 3 hours a week, if it is showing the skills that are needed for that next role, flaunt it, make it your main bullets of your resume. I also think that personal projects are incredible. So if, let's say I wanted to be a recruiter or something like that, I would maybe, volunteer. I have a neighbor who owns a brewery. Like, I would maybe volunteer to help him recruit staff now that breweries are open. I would maybe, do, like, I'd be a part of an organization, like an organization in my community, and I would be the one to help recruit volunteers. All of these things show those skills without someone handing me an offer letter. And so really getting a bit more creative, and that's what people want to see on their resumes, and that's how you overcome that gap.
Wow, that was pretty amazing there. I got to give you this for that. There are so many things you hit on just now that I align with perfectly. One of the things that, sometimes they'll come to me as a recruiter because they see the recruiter in my background, like, hey, I want to see if maybe you can help me out. I'm looking to kind of make a change over to healthcare. Okay, great. What job are you looking for in healthcare? I'm not really sure. I have this background. What do you think is best for me? That's not my job. I can't. I can't do that. My mind is blown at that point. I cannot help someone who doesn't have specificity, who's not specific about what they want. And an employer is also not going to want it. They're not going to want to figure that out, what's best for you. Now, maybe in some cases, if you see someone, you get to know someone, like going to your earlier point, if you get to know someone, maybe you get a chance to know their qualities, like those top 5 applicants. You're talking about those 5 out of the 500 that they know. Then they say, you know what, Johnny, Susie, whatever, I see you've got this skill set. You may not be a right fit for this one, but I got this other job for you. That's another thing. But it's based off specifics. Like, they have this other job, right, that they can refer this person to. But someone like myself, I'm not going to be able to give that person advice without figuring out what they want first. I love what you said about 50% of the battle is figuring out what you want, being very specific, very intentional, I think was the term you used. I totally agree. We have Catherine came in. Catherine says, "Great to see you live, Ross." Well, good to see you too, Catherine. Thanks for being here. And those who are just now signing in, feel free to let us know what city or state, country you're signing in from. Let us know where you are on your journey. Are you looking right now? Are you kind of thinking about making a career move? Is it something you've thought about? Have you thought about a pivot? Are you perhaps an employer or a talent acquisition recruiter or something of that nature? Maybe you can give some of your advice and your thoughts and some of your experiences. So one of the things I wanted to cover too, Madeline, is in terms of the steps. I know you probably outlined this in your class. Maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of a cliff notes, if you will, steps on maybe like 1, 2, 3, as far as what you mentioned. I guess step 1 is to be intentional, right, about what you want, right? That's probably number 1. What would steps 2 and 3 be in this process?
Of making a career change?
Yes.
So, okay, yes. So we had, zone in on exactly what your next step would be. The second step would be really understanding, making sure you understand what you'll need to do that role. I think a lot of times people will read job descriptions and say, I can do those things. It'll list maybe some soft skills. They'll think, I'm a good communicator. I know how to plan events and stuff like that. And what they won't really read between the lines, or they won't have had conversations with people in that industry where they'll understand, okay, here's the lingo you need to know. Here's what they actually, here's some of the cues of some of the things that you should have under your belt. And so they just kind of go into it being like, why do I keep getting rejected? It's because everyone else who's getting the interview has those specific things on their resume. And it's not that you can't get those on your resume. It's just that you need to be more intentional. So really making sure that you're having lots of informational interviews, not just relying on online research, but really understanding, okay, as I'm talking to people in this industry, when they look at my resume, literally asking them, what would I have to change on my resume in order for me to be considered for a job at your company? And that can be very revealing. Then once you feel like your resume and your skill set is to a point that you can move forward, I say, yes, applying online does work at times. So I don't think that should be a completely disregarded approach, but especially if you're a career changer, typically people who get interviews from applying online are people who fit that industry, who fit those role specifications pretty closely. So if you've done really good pre-work, like building up the right experience, then maybe applying online could be fruitful. But if you're feeling like there's some major gaps there, one way to overcome them is what we were talking about earlier, is building those relationships. Because when people get to know your character, when people get to know your passion and see how you have become quite the student of the industry and the profession, and that you bring a lot to the table, they stop seeing you as a black and white resume page and start seeing you as someone who is actually maybe bringing cross-industry knowledge, which will actually make their team better, who is bringing this dynamic view, who is someone who they'd love to work with. And that completely changes the conversation. So building those relationships, making sure it's a long-term play instead of a short-term play. I've had many people in my programs where I keep telling them, keep being persistent. They'll get rejected for a role. That role will pop up again because they've done such great work building those relationships before and continuing to work on themselves between when that role is open. I've had so many students in my programs land the role the second time because it's just like, as soon as it hits online, they have those relationships. They're like, hey, look what else I've done. And they're like, oh my gosh, how could we not give this guy or gal a chance? And then they just grab it.
Love it. Okay, so I have 2 questions I want to ask you. Hopefully, I remember both of them. Then my first question, is in terms of I want to see how this lands on you. So let's say I'm looking for a job, because you've got experience as a talent development manager on the HR side, as well as a career coach. How does this land on you if you're seeing my application come in multiple times for multiple jobs? Let's say it's like, I don't know, like 10 jobs I've applied for at your company. What are you thinking as an HR person or as a career coach? What are you thinking at that point?
Ooh, I love this question because I'm almost never asked it, but it's such a real experience. So if it's all different roles, like they're applying for all different roles about across the company. One's a product manager role, another one's a customer support, another is a marketing coordinator. I'm going to think, hell no, there's no way we're hiring this person, because they cannot be good at all of those. They can be like okay or poor at all of those roles, but there's no way that they are like amazing at all of them. So they obviously are not targeted, and they haven't been building those skills, and their value isn't clear to the company. Now, if it's they're applying for customer support associate and customer support team lead and member experience associate, and I'm like, okay, like this person has like a realm, and so that wouldn't be a flag. I think one of the things that I once saw in someone's cover letter that ended up landing her an interview was she put in her cover letter, I applied to this role 6 months ago. I was so excited to see it open again, and here's why. And she said why she's so interested in the company and what she brought to the table and how that matched what the role was. And so that spun her reapplying into a strength. So her being persistent and saying, I have been watching your company, waiting. I applied before, I'm going to apply again. Companies want people who are passionate. And so that was a great indicator. So I would say, yeah, just make sure that it is. But also the final thing I'll say on this topic is, ideally, if you're applying and you're not getting responses or whatnot, just make sure that your whole strategy isn't every time the job opens up, you apply. Like there should be more proactive correspondence, trying to build other relationships, that kind of stuff.
I like that. That's a great point. So basically what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you at least want to have a theme, right? So you mentioned customer service. So if there are different jobs, different roles, but they're within that kind of that customer service kind of theme, versus the other example you gave was product manager and then customer service and all these different other things. I like that point. So you got some balance. You have a balanced approach in that if there's a theme there, if it's easy for the recruiter to see why you applied for all those different jobs, then that makes sense. Whereas if they're just all over the map, they're like, yeah, this person doesn't know what they don't know what they want. Did I get that right?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, my other question for you is, and I talked to someone about this not so long ago. I see a lot of people on LinkedIn, and maybe they do this on the resume too. They lead with 10 years of experience or 20 years of experience as a strength. And what I explain to someone is that doesn't differentiate you from anybody else. Because what if everybody else has 10 years of experience? Then how do you differentiate yourself? So what are your thoughts on that whole thing about, do you lead first with the amount of years of experience? Is that something you tell your clients to lead with?
Wow, this is another question I've never gotten, which I think is such an important one. I completely agree with you. 10 years of experience, 20 years of experience, whatever it is not, it's generic. And also really, especially in how fast things move today, it's all about quality of experience. So if you have a quality of, you are really up on the latest technologies and you can hire for React Native engineers, which no one has 20 years experience of hiring React Native engineers because it didn't exist 20 years ago. So stuff like that, where it's like, companies want to see that you have specialized knowledge in the things that you would be doing for the company. And so, yeah, I think that really emphasizing those certain expertise, and also, as you know, in the job interview, in the resume, almost, companies very rarely look beyond the last role, the last 2 roles, last 3 roles. After like 3 roles, they're like, okay, that's old news. Like, let's focus on what you've done lately. And so I think really, like, let's focus more on like, what are some of your key accomplishments, especially as of late? What are some of the skills you've been building over time? And yeah, I think also, if you ever are putting years of experience on your LinkedIn or your resume and it doesn't almost nearly exactly match the job description, that could actually be a trap for you to be determined as overqualified or underqualified. And we don't want to make it that easy for people to disqualify you.
Okay, I have so many notes on this. I have so many questions now. Okay, so, and by the way, those in the audience, if you have any questions, let me know. But I'm going to keep running with this. I'm trying to ask questions that will help some of these folks who maybe they're afraid to ask on their own or don't know to ask on their own. One of them is you said earlier. You said cover letter. You said you read a cover letter. Now, I personally, as a recruiter, have not utilized cover letters that much. I'm looking straight at the resume. But I noticed you said cover letter. In your experience, how important is a cover letter, and how often does the HR team look at cover letters?
Okay, so I think you and me in this session right now is the perfect example of about 50% of people read cover letters. So I read cover letters, you don't. Like that's really normal. And so that's not an exact stat, but it's just basically it's a flip of a coin, right? And what happens is if the coin comes up, tails or reading the cover letter, that could make or break your application. That could be an amazing way for you to get in. Now, if it comes up heads, it could be that you just, quote, wasted time writing that cover letter, which is a total bummer. You're like, oh, why did I do that? So there's definitely pros and cons. But I would say for me, and what I've noticed typically is, for those who are at larger companies, a lot higher volume hiring and that kind of stuff, cover letters often go to the wayside. But as you get more into medium and small organizations, that's when cover letters can really make a big difference because when it comes to, I've worked at some companies that had some niche industries. I worked in the blockchain industry where we found that it was easier to hire people who are already passionate about the technology than to convince someone who is unfamiliar with the technology
Right.
of what it was and why
Yeah.
you should think it's cool. And so I would look for in the cover letter, people who already took that initiative, and we would hire people who were less qualified but more passionate, simply because these types of companies, I mean, they run on people who are very iterative and are willing to work in uncertainty and build their skills, and really have that longevity where they can be passionate about their work. And so it depends on the type of company, but that was a case where cover letters really truly were make or break, because we were really saying, okay, we're going to hire really smart people and train them and help them with their skills a bit, as long as they have the baseline skills and the baseline passion.
I like this. Okay, so in my field, in healthcare, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say it's registered nurse and they have years of experience. Let's say it's an OR nurse and they're looking for an OR nurse position. That's where I think, and okay, let me also qualify one other thing. When I said don't look at cover letters, I don't look at them first. I will look at a cover letter if I feel like I need more information, right? Especially if it's like you said, a coin flip, like if it's 50-50 kind of thing. But if it's an OR nurse and it's for an OR job and they have like 3 or 4 years of experience, I'm not really concerned about the cover letter. I'm like, let's just get them on the phone. Mm-hmm. Let's just see if they're a fit. It's more cut and dry. But I can see it where, especially where like what you said, you want to see somebody who's passionate about the field. Or in the case, maybe you'll agree with me on this, if they're fresh out of school, or to kind of explain the reason why they applied for that job and maybe some of the stuff they've done in the past that is applicable to that job. Or maybe it's for an executive position too, I've also found. And I love the point you made for the small and medium-sized companies. But for the executive position, I probably would expect some level of a cover letter at some point. If it's like a CEO, CMO, CFO, I would think, I would definitely read that. That's, I don't know. I want to just kind of clarify. I don't know if you had any more clarifications on your end with cover letters.
I really agree with what you said when you said I look at the cover letter to clear things up, to get a little bit more information. That, and job seekers should know this, that cover letters are not the first line of offense. Start with the resume, and then the cover letter gives more detail. Absolutely. And you're right. Like if someone is right on the money, like they are perfectly qualified, exactly what we're looking for, you're right. The cover letter, you can probably get by without not having one, or having a very brief one. But I think there's some things where, especially for career changers, I'll look at the resume and think, okay, I can understand how someone with this background would have transferable skills into this, but it kind of seems, but I want to make sure in their cover letter that this is an intentional move, that they're explaining why, or anything that's like a little bit funky about their resume, they can explain in the cover letter and be like, hey, like, I know it looks like I I wasn't working between this time, but here's why, or something like that. The cover letter is to really clarify those
Yes, I
things.
love that point. Okay, one. This is where I would love a cover letter. Let's say someone's been hopping around a lot. They got a lot of different jobs. They can explain the cover letter why I'm seeing so much movement on their position, because I know either myself or the hiring manager is going to wonder, like, why does this person have like 4 jobs in the past 5 years? So I think that cover letters could really help in that extent, because they could explain, hey, look, this company merged, this company got bought out. My husband moved, or my wife moved, or what, I don't know, just something to kind of help give some background on why why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. I think is a big help. So thank you for clarifying my thoughts on, like, I think I have a more balanced view, because I was like, before this conversation I was like, yeah, cover letters, it's kind of outdated. But now as I'm talking to you, I'm like, yeah, I do see where it could be still useful in a lot of cases. Thank you for that. Okay, so Madeline,
Right on.
what's one of the biggest mistakes that you see people make in their job search? Either a pet peeve or a biggest mistake that you thought of. And thanks to Ahmed. Ahmed's coming in from I think he's way across the world. And he's dialing in. So thanks for coming in. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Your biggest pet peeve or biggest mistake?
One of the biggest mistakes is oftentimes, and we even kind of talked about this briefly, of folks in the healthcare industry or in other industries, of thinking about applying online or applying to jobs, pursuing jobs, as you submit an application, just like you would when you're trying to get into a master's program or an undergraduate program or whatnot. You submit an application and you wait patiently, and all of the applications are reviewed. And then at the end, you learn if you were accepted or not. That is not always the way companies roll. They might open up applications, they might get through some of them, but there's too many. So they start setting up interviews with the ones that they come up first, or with the ones that slide across their desk from previous interviews that they've done before, but they didn't hire them, but they still want to possibly interview them again, and referrals. Like, there's all these different inputs, and your resume simply just may never be read ever. And so what's detrimental about that is you might have been the perfect person for that role, but because the digital pile of resumes is so high and there's all these different inputs, you sitting on the sidelines is actually hugely detrimental. So what I really recommend is making sure that your resume is seen, building these relationships, getting referred into companies, following up with the hiring manager or whoever is in charge of that process, and just making sure that the job search is more active. And a really simple way to understand if you're doing that a good job is how many interactions with humans you have. So never count and apply online as something is like a check the box. No, you need to have an interaction with a person, sending an email, a LinkedIn message, a comment on a post, any sort of correspondence. That counts as a really productive job search move.
Ooh, I like that. That's really cool. Okay, so you made me think of something else just now. Oh, wow. The question was on the tip of my tongue, and I forgot. I wanted to get your opinion on this. Oh, what was that? By the way, we got someone else just came in and said, beautiful show. So thank you. What was that? Okay, you were talking about, play that last point for me again. Because I think it was as you were saying it.
Yeah. So I was saying you shouldn't measure your job search in applications submitted, but interactions with people.
Yes. Okay, interactions. Okay. So what types of interactions do you think are the most meaningful during a job search? Describe for me, because we know applications, that doesn't count. Don't just like spray and pray and 100 applicate. So we want to be specific. What other interactions? Because sometimes people are really confused about what's appropriate, of what kind of interaction should I have with this potential recruiter or hiring manager. They just interviewed me. Should I email that hiring manager directly? Should I go through the recruiter? What should I do? So I know this is going through a lot of folks' minds. What kind of interactions are good as you're coaching your clients?
Yes, you definitely, one of the worst ones is sending your resume and saying, hey, can you refer me? Hey, I want this job. Like, please consider me. It's just, it just really kind of is very transactional. I really recommend a bit more of a customized approach. So it could be setting up an informational interview with someone or asking for an informational interview saying, hey, Patty, I saw that we both have masters in organizational psychology, and you ended up following this path of talent development. I would you be open to spending 15 minutes so I can hear about your story? And then you can get on the phone, and of course, naturally, you'll tell Patty about who you are, what are your aspirations. Right now I'm looking for my next role. I'm considering the industry you're in. How do you like working at your company? And this is a way, and here's the wild thing. People love telling their story. People love sharing their wisdom. It feels very fulfilling to a lot of people. So if they say yes, they're saying yes because they will enjoy this conversation too. And I think one of the things is I did get my master's at USC, and they have this activity where they tell all the other master's students to do informational interviews with alumni. And I did a bunch of them where they called me, and so many of them would get on the phone and they'd have their list of questions, and they would be so efficient. They'd be like, hello, okay, tell me about your typical day. Okay, what is your least favorite thing about your job? And I'd get off the phone and I was like, I don't know who I just spoke to. Was it a robot? Like, really, part of it is being human, having conversation, building a relationship. It's not a transaction. I think we need to get out of that mindset.
This is gold. I love that. This is a great one. Okay. So I have another follow-up question for you. I think that a lot of times today, with the amount of resumes and applications that are coming in for the recruiters themselves and the hiring managers, it's incredibly confusing because I read a study not too long ago. This is an older study. That anytime we're presented with more than 7 choices at one time, it becomes increasingly difficult for us to differentiate one choice from another. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's 7 cars that look pretty much the same, or if it's 7 kinds of chocolate, 7 kinds of wine. 7 is kind of our magic number. That's a max. Once you get like into 8, 9, 10, 12, it's like, it's hard. It's like, okay, I can't remember. I tasted that one. I'm not sure if I like that one, or if it was this one here. We start getting mixed up. So my question to you is, with these jobs that have 50, 100, 200, 300 applications coming in, and it being so difficult for them to differentiate, what are some things you're suggesting to your clients to help to differentiate them? And do you agree with the thought of there's just too many choices sometimes for hiring managers to make?
Absolutely. There's too many choices. There's also a lot of distrust. When you're looking at these resumes, 1 out of every 4 resumes has a lie on it. How do you know which one has a lie on it? I don't know. So what did they end up doing? They end up taking, Bob in accounting walks over with a resume, says, hey, you should hire, you should interview this guy. He seems pretty cool. And we go, we're looking at this resume pile, like, sure, Bob knows something that I don't know about this person. Like, that makes my decision easier. So that's why referrals are so potent, because it helps just get away from this pile of the unknowns. And so, yes, I think the referral is definitely a silver bullet. I think the follow-up, the relationship building. And also, I mean, if we're going to talk about some of the more edgy things to do, it might be that you put together some sort of really cool, like, for example, like I was watching TikTok the other day, and I was swiping through, and this guy proposed a new app for David Dobrik, who's like for anyone who's unfamiliar with him, he's like a major like YouTuber, TikTok guy. He like proposed a new app for him. And he's like, at the end of the video, he's like, this is my job application. Like, cause he's like building it on the platform that David Dobrik is really talented on. And so nice. It's just like, just thinking about ways that you can stand out, where you can show your skills in a way that is not just the way that they're asking for it, which is typically a resume.
I like that. That's a great idea. Yeah. In fact, you reminded me of this one lady years ago. It was on LinkedIn. She had put something on because she couldn't find a job hardly anywhere, and she really wanted an Airbnb. She wanted it so bad, And she ended up putting like this big posting about Airbnb, and it kind of went viral. And she got the attention of the CEO. I don't know if she ended up getting the job or not, but she got the attention of the CEO of Airbnb. That's how successful she was with her post. So that's a great idea. Okay, so my other thing is when it comes to, going back to we talked about that interview with the person. What should the person should have done differently whenever they got you on the phone and you're willing to, and I agree with you, I think most people are willing to share their experience. When they got you on the phone, what should they have done first at the let's construct that call more perfectly.
Yeah. So we're talking about informational interviews. This person is, has a budding human resources career. They hop on the phone with someone who like me, who has years of experience in the field. They hop on, and the first thing I wanted to hear is who they are. Like, and sometimes people take this too short. Like, actually, I've seen more people take this too short than too long, but I've seen it go both ways. Too short means, hi, I won't take up too much of your time. What do you do every day? It's just like, oh, okay. Like, They just think I would never want to know anything about you, which is very humble, but it's not true. When you're calling someone and doing an informational interview, you want to know who you're talking to. You want to know the context about what they're passionate about, because that's going to change what I say in the conversation as well. It's going to change how I relate to you and how I deliver information. And so you want to give like a couple minutes about, I thought I was going to be a marine biologist, but then I took this class and I realized I'm really interested in social psychology. And, here are the types of roles I'm interested in. And that's why I was so excited. And then saying why you're excited to talk to that person. That's why I was so excited to talk to you, because I saw that you also have a background, in biology and kind of moved into this space or whatever. I don't actually have a background in biology, but really just kind of giving that context, and then me as a person be like, oh, okay, great. And then the second thing is make sure that you are leading the conversation. I've been in some of these where it gets a little bit awkward, where it's like I can be sometimes I don't know if dominating presence is the right word, but I'm ready to talk, ready to chat. And sometimes it almost feel like, oh, I should probably let her lead the conversation. Right. It's like, no, you called me. Like, I'm here to just reflect the information that you're looking for. So make sure you're in control of the call, and then just really make sure that you've done, like, you should never ask them a question that could be very easily looked up. Like, how long have you been at your company?
Yes.
What did you study in undergrad? Like, of course, if those things are not on their LinkedIn profile, of course you can ask them, but it is like really, not that great if someone's kind of spending their time doing that. I know at this point there's like, I'm definitely much more discoverable than your average person. So that is a bit different, but most people, they do have a lot of information online anyways to get those baseline questions.
Yeah.
And then I would say the final thing is, you'd be so surprised at how few of people who, when they've asked me to do informational interviews with them, how few of them say thank you. Like, very rarely do I get an email later saying, hey, that was really helpful to me because of XYZ. Have a great, week, month, life, And so I think that it's amazing. It's such a missed opportunity, because you should be thanking them. You should be following up with them a month later, telling them, hey, you told me about this, this, and this. Here's how I'm implementing it. People actually want to hear about what they said impacted you, even if you do the opposite of what they said, or even if you end up not going in that career direction, because they're part of your journey now. And so I think that's a huge missed opportunity for most people.
Love that one too. That was great. Because I've given a lot of advice over the years to help people, took time out of my schedule to help them, and never got a thank you. No follow-up whatsoever. And never really offered anything to, we're in a reciprocal society. So you would think that if you spend the time to help them, they would come back and say, hey, you know what? You helped me that way. Is there any way I can add value to you or help you? I had several that never don't do that. But I will say this, a large percentage still do follow up later. They do say thank you, and that's which I very much appreciate. So I agree with you 100% that a simple thank you really helps. And not just like thank you at the end of the call. Like you said,
No.
following up later.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, it makes 100% sense to me. Um, what are some things I can expect if I'm looking to make this career either change or just looking to level up in my career, and I'm going through this course you're talking about? I'm just curious, like, how long is this course? How long can I expect to see results from it? I'm just curious at this point. What, because it says masterclass and that's all I know.
Yeah, so I have two programs. One you can access right now on my website, which is called Standout Resume, which is like really like in one weekend you can knock out your resume. It like has been getting people like interviews within days of doing it. It's affordable. You kind of like get in, get out. And I'm in there in a private community giving people feedback on their resumes every day. So that one's a blast. And then my one, which is my one where I'm actually giving live coaching. So I just get all these requests all the time of like, I want to work directly with you, Madeline. And so I have that one is kind of like the bigger course, which is called Standout Job Search, and that one is where there is group coaching, and it's full A to Z, from like your resume to your cover letter to your all of these like networking approaches that I've never released, and there's all these different frameworks and email templates. It's basically like a culmination of all of the things that are like almost a little bit too potent to make too public, because I don't want to make it oversaturated and where everyone's using the same approaches. So I put all of those kind of secret, edgy approaches into one course where it has coaching and a private community and all of that. And so that has been an absolute blast. And that's actually what I think you're referring to is I just recently did a masterclass to welcome people into that, and people have been flowing into the program, and it's just been really fun and really cool program.
Cool. Excellent. Any tips you want to give on resumes specifically from? Let's put your HR hat on you, because I know you're on the HR side still. When those resumes come in, what are one of the first things you notice on a resume?
So resumes, when you look at a resume, it's typically you scan it in more of like an F pattern. So the top of the resume, the top area really gets a lot more attention, and there's kind of offshoots as you go down. But if you kind of like, then there's like kind of a scanning along the side that is less dense. So really the information at the top of your resume is really compelling, right? Like you notice, are they in this city that I'm interviewing for? What's their most recent job title? Like, is this, what kind of company were they just working at? Those are some of like the top cues that just immediately stand out.
Okay. By the way, when you said earlier about 1 in 4 resumes have a lie on them, you reminded me of a movie I saw recently, Tom and Jerry.
I haven't seen that yet.
Okay. So there's a situation where this lady basically just rips off the top of the resume and puts her, I guess, name at the top and presents itself as if it's her. And they were so impressed with her experience and everything. And she got the job. She got the job. But like, it wasn't just like 1 out of 4. It was literally everything on the resume except for what was at the top was incorrect. Anyway, listen, today has been an awesome day. Really appreciate all the advice and stuff you gave. Any thoughts you want to leave folks with as we kind of wind up things in terms of job search, career, resume, whatever you want to share?
I think it's really all about having clarity about your next step, and then making efforts to not treat it as a numbers game, but more of a relationship game.
I like that. Yeah, I like that very much. What's advice you would give yourself before you start? Let's say you just graduated from USC. What advice would you give to that version of Madeline?
Yeah, I think that we emphasize, especially on our resumes, what we're most proud of and what we put our blood, sweat, and tears into, and 50 hours a week we worked on that. And that was the biggest project we did. Instead of focusing on what is the most relevant information to the company. And I think a lot of times we're too close to our own story. So people will emphasize things that just in their head, they're like, oh, like if I can only tell you the story, like it changed my life. And that's how I became the person I am. But it's like, yeah, but does it show the skills and does it show a very logical connection to exactly what you'll do in this job? No, it doesn't. And so I think really reframing it, you have to think about from the company's perspective. And that's like, I have this thing called like the glory formula that I teach in my programs, that each letter of glory stands for a different thing. And it gives you this very intentional process. And I've had people go through and be like, wait, I get it now. I thought my glory was something else. I've been focusing on all the wrong things. And it just you need that complete mindset shift.
Oh, I like that. Okay. One last question for you I wanted to ask. It's always stressful when you put in your resume and your application and you're waiting for a response, or you put in for that, you did this interview, you think you nailed it, but you still have to wait to get an answer back. What are some things that you suggest to deal with that stress of waiting?
So there's two things you need to do off the bat. First thing is don't assume that opportunity is going to come through for you. So keep your job search moving full speed. And the second thing to do is to not assume that you're not getting it. So still also consider that you might still get it, even if it's been a few weeks. And I actually did, if folks want to go, it's like right on the front page of my website, madelinemann.com. I wrote follow-up email templates for you to send. And so if you just send those follow-up email templates, you can often hear back a lot faster. But I just don't want you to read like, oh, it's been 2.5 weeks. That means they hate me. No, like these people who are hiring are the busiest people in the organization. The only reason they're hiring is because they have more work than they have people. So don't take it as a signal that they hate you. But also don't take a signal as, oh, I got the interview. This is my top choice. I'm going to just cruise. Keep the pedal to the metal, but also keep following up.
That's golden right there. I want to see what our audience has to say about that. Oh, they seem to like it. Very good. So Joanne just put she just put your website in the comments. Those of you who are watching, and those of you who are watching, please, if you're watching even the replay, go ahead and put in your comments what resonated with you the most. What was the best tip you heard over our session today? I'm curious. And if you have any follow-up questions, let us know. Myself and Madeline are both tagged in this, so we'll be able to see your question. So feel free to ask a question, even if you're watching the replay. Thank you for watching today. Let's say bye to everyone. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
You guys are awesome. Okay, so stay on for just a moment, and I'll make sure that we are clear to stop transmitting. So how was this day? How'd you enjoy it?
This was great. I was not playing when I said you're asking me questions that aren't the same questions everyone asked me, which is fine. Like I love this topic, but yeah, I mean, I feel like you touched on things where I'm like, oh, people always do that wrong, and like no one's talking about it.
Awesome. Okay, let me just double check.
Also, you're good, Rollis.